All right, everybody, let's dive into something I think is pretty exciting. We're talking generative AI in DevOps. This is something that I think really has the potential to, I don't know, maybe even revolutionize
hmm
the way that we develop and deploy software.
Absolutely. And I think, everyone's talking about generative AI right now,
Yeah.
but we want to specifically look at how it can be applied to the challenges that we face in DevOps because things are getting more complex than ever. Cloud systems are growing. We've got microservices everywhere, distributed architectures, and our traditional ways of doing DevOps are starting to maybe show their age a little bit.
Yeah, so we're talking to all you senior devs out there,
Yeah.
tech leads, architects, DevOps gurus, anybody who's really in the trenches
Yeah.
dealing with this increasing complexity. And, I think the analogy that comes to mind for me is it's like we've been using, bicycles
Yeah.
to navigate rush hour traffic. And we're finally starting to get some, maybe some faster vehicles, maybe even some self-driving cars to help us manage this crazy landscape.
That's a great analogy because, when we think about those traditional DevOps approaches, a lot of it has been very manual, very script-based, and we're constantly playing catch-up, trying to keep up with the pace of change. But generative AI offers us this opportunity to move beyond just basic automation and start thinking about self-learning systems,
Yeah.
systems that can analyze past data, identify patterns, and actually generate those scripts, generate those configurations that we need without us having to manually do it every single time.
So it's not just about taking orders or following instructions.
Yeah.
It's actually about having the AI learn from what we've done
Yeah.
and start to anticipate what we need and maybe even suggest better ways of doing things.
Exactly. And one of the key areas where this is really impactful is in infrastructure management. Think about all the time we spent provisioning servers, configuring networks,
Mm.
setting up security groups. With generative AI, we can start to automate a lot of that because the AI can look at our past deployments. It can see what's worked well, what
Yeah.
hasn't worked well, and it can start to generate those infrastructure as code templates or those
Sure.
configuration files that we need. And that not only saves us time, but it also reduces the potential for human error.
Which, as we all know, is a huge source of problems in DevOps.
Absolutely. And I think, another area where this is really exciting is in the realm of CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous delivery. Our pipelines are getting more and more complex as our code bases grow, as we add more features, more tests, and it can be really difficult to keep those pipelines running smoothly, to keep them fast, keep them efficient.
Yeah, CI/CD can definitely become a bottleneck, especially as you start to scale up.
Right. And so generative AI can help us in a couple of ways here. First of all, it can analyze the data from our pipelines. It can look at build times, test results, deployment patterns, and identify any bottlenecks, any areas where we're slowing down.
So it's like having a consultant come in and say,
Yeah,
all right, here's where your bottlenecks are. Here's how you can optimize your pipeline.
exactly. But it's not just about identifying the problems. Generative AI can also suggest solutions. It can say, hey, maybe you should try parallelizing these tests, or maybe you should refactor this piece of code because it's causing these downstream
So
problems.
it's going beyond just like the basic monitoring and reporting that we get from traditional tools.
Absolutely. And in some cases, it can even implement those changes automatically. So, we're moving towards this idea of self-optimizing pipelines that can learn and improve over time
Hmm.
without us having to constantly tweak them manually.
I mean, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
But are we really at the point where,
Hmm.
AI can just take over our CI/CD pipelines?
Well, I think we're getting closer to that point. But there's still a role for humans.
Mhm.
We need to be there to oversee the process, to make sure that the AI is making good decisions, and to handle those edge cases, those
Mhm.
unexpected situations that the AI might not be able to deal with.
So it's more of a collaboration
Yeah,
between the AI and the human experts.
exactly. And I think that's really the key takeaway here is that generative AI is not about replacing humans. It's about augmenting our capabilities. It's
Yeah.
about giving us superpowers so that we can do our jobs better,
Yeah.
faster, and with less stress.
And I think that's a good segue into another really important topic, which is security. Because security is always top of mind for us in DevOps.
Uh,
And, we're constantly trying to stay one step ahead of the bad guys.
Absolutely. And the traditional approach to security has been very reactive. We wait for something bad to happen and then we try to patch the hole. But with generative AI, we can start to move towards a more proactive approach because the AI can analyze our system data. It can look for patterns that might indicate a potential attack or
Mhm.
a vulnerability.
So it's like having an AI security guard that's constantly scanning the perimeter, looking for any signs of trouble.
Right. And this guard is much more vigilant than any human could be.
Hmm.
because it can analyze massive amounts of data in real time, and it can spot those subtle anomalies that might indicate a breach before any damage is
And
done.
I'm guessing it's also learning from every attack that it
Mhm.
sees. So it's constantly getting smarter and better at detecting new threats.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the key advantages of using AI for security is that it's constantly evolving, it's constantly learning, and it can adapt to new threats much faster than humans can.
So this is all starting to sound pretty incredible.
Yeah.
But I'm also starting to think about,
Oh.
all the data that we're generating in DevOps. We've got metrics, we've
Mhm.
got logs, we've got alerts coming from every direction.
Yeah.
How does generative AI help us make sense of all this data?
That's where observability comes in. Traditional monitoring tools, they often just throw data at us and expect us to figure it out, but generative AI can actually analyze that data and extract meaningful insights.
So instead of just giving us like a dashboard with a bunch of graphs and charts, it's actually telling us what those graphs and charts mean
Yeah.
and what we should do about it.
Exactly, and it can do that in real time. So for example, let's say your application starts to experience a performance slowdown. Generative AI can analyze the metrics, the logs, and pinpoint the root cause of the problem.
So it could say something like, hey, looks like you've got a memory leak in this particular module. Or, your database is overloaded.
Exactly. And it can even go a step further and suggest solutions. It can say, hey, you might want to increase the memory allocation for this service, or you might want to optimize this database query.
So it's not just about telling us what's wrong. It's about telling us how to fix it.
Exactly. And in some cases, it can even implement those fixes automatically. So, we're moving towards this idea of self-healing systems, systems that can diagnose and repair themselves without any human intervention.
I mean, that sounds like the holy grail of DevOps.
It's definitely a very exciting direction that we're moving in.
So we've got smarter automations, proactive security, and actionable insights from our data. This is starting to sound like the DevOps dream team. But I'm guessing there's some caveats here, right? I mean, generative AI is powerful, but it's not magic.
You're absolutely right. And that's what we're going to dig into next. We're going to talk about some of the challenges and the potential pitfalls of using generative AI in DevOps. So stay tuned.
Yeah, so, we've been talking about all the amazing things that generative AI can do for DevOps, but it's important to remember that it's not a silver bullet. There are definitely some challenges and potential pitfalls that we need to be aware of.
All right, so let's talk about the dark side of generative AI. What are some of the things that could go wrong if we're not careful?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is data quality. Remember, generative AI models are trained on data, and if that data is bad, the model is going to produce bad results.
Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So we need to make sure that the data we're feeding our AI models is clean, accurate, and representative of the real world. Otherwise, we're going to end up with AI systems that are making bad decisions or giving us misleading information.
So data cleanup is job number one. What else should we be worried about?
Another challenge is finding the right balance between automation and human oversight. It's tempting to think that we can just let the AI handle everything, but that's not always the best approach.
So even with AI, we still need humans in the loop.
Absolutely. AI is great at certain things, like analyzing data, identifying patterns, and making predictions. But it's not so good at things like dealing with unexpected situations or making judgment calls that require human intuition.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where AI augments human capabilities, but doesn't completely replace them.
Exactly. And I think that's especially important in DevOps because we're dealing with complex systems that can have a real impact on the business.
So we can't just let the AI run wild. We need to have humans involved in the decision-making process.
Right. And I think that leads to another important challenge, which is security.
Okay, so we talked about AI being great at detecting threats. But can it also become a target itself?
Absolutely. AI systems are just like any other software system. They can be vulnerable to attacks if they're not properly secured.
So we need to be just as vigilant about securing our AI systems as we are about securing our production servers.
Exactly. And that means things like implementing strong access controls, encrypting sensitive data, and monitoring for suspicious activity.
So it sounds like there's a lot to think about here. But I'm also sensing that, the potential benefits of generative AI really outweigh the challenges.
I absolutely agree. I think we're still in the early days of generative AI, but the potential is enormous. And I'm really excited to see how this technology is going to transform DevOps in the years to come.
All right, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the positive side. Paint me a picture of what a successful AI-powered DevOps future looks like?
Well, I think in a successful AI-powered DevOps future, we're going to see a lot more automation. But it's going to be smarter automation, automation that's driven by AI, and that can learn and adapt over time. We're also going to see a lot more proactive security, where AI is helping us to identify and mitigate threats before they can cause any damage. And we're going to see a lot more actionable insights from our data, where AI is helping us to understand what's happening in our systems and make better decisions.
So it's not just about doing things faster, it's about doing things smarter.
Exactly. And I think that's going to free up DevOps teams to focus on more strategic work,
Right.
like innovating
Mm.
and improving the overall quality of our software.
So instead of spending all our time
Mm.
firefighting
Mm.
and dealing with mundane tasks,
Yeah.
we can actually focus on building great software.
Exactly. And I think that's ultimately going to lead to better outcomes for everyone.
So this all sounds really exciting.
Sure.
But for someone who's listening to this
Mm-hmm.
and thinking, okay, I want to get started with generative AI, but where do I even begin and what advice would you give them?
Well, I think the first step is to just start learning about AI. There are a lot of great resources available online, and there are also a lot of great courses and workshops that you can take. Once you have a basic understanding of AI, you can start to think about how you can apply it to your own work. And there are a lot of great tools and platforms available that can help you get started.
So it's not something that's like completely out of reach for the average DevOps team.
No, not at all. I think AI is becoming more and more accessible, and there are a lot of great ways to get started.
And I think the important thing is to remember that. You don't have to do everything at once. You can start small and experiment with different tools and techniques.
Absolutely. And I think the most important thing is to just be curious and to keep learning, because AI is a rapidly evolving field and there are always new things to discover.
Yeah. And, it's not just about being curious. It's about being willing to experiment because that's how we're going to find out what works best for our teams, for our organizations, for our specific needs. It's like that old saying, you can't steer a parked car.
Exactly. You got to be moving. You got to be trying things. You got to be iterating.
And, speaking of iteration, I think one of the things that's really exciting about generative AI is that it can help us to speed up that iteration cycle. We can try things out, we can get feedback, and we can make adjustments much faster than we could before.
Absolutely, because the AI can help us to automate a lot of those tasks that used to take up so much of our time.
And that frees us up to focus on the things that really matter, like innovation and
Yeah,
creativity.
exactly. And, I think that's really the key takeaway here is that generative AI is not about replacing humans. It's about augmenting our capabilities. It's about giving us the tools that we need to do our jobs better.
It's about taking us to the next level.
Exactly.
So if you're a senior developer
Yeah.
or a tech lead or an architect
Yeah.
or a DevOps guru, and you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, okay, this sounds amazing, but what does it mean for me? What does it mean for my role?
It means that your role is going to become even more important because you're going to be the one who's guiding the AI. You're going to be the one who's making sure that it's being used effectively, and you're going to be the one who's ultimately responsible for the outcomes.
So it's not about being replaced by the AI. It's about becoming the AI whisperer.
Exactly. You're going to be the AI conductor.
So for all of you conductors out there, we want to hear from you. Head over to the Pragmatic Reviews YouTube channel, hit that like button, and leave a comment. Tell us what excites you most about the potential of generative AI in DevOps, or what questions are still swirling in your head.
We'd love to hear your thoughts.
And thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep innovating, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the world of DevOps.